All right, welcome everybody to part two of directory failover setup, where we're going to show you the steps that are necessary to be taken whenever you're installing or configuring directory failover. We've went through part one and to the slides. In part two, we're going to concentrate on slide number 6. And in slide 6, we have the steps for the configuration of directory failover. Now, you see here, there are the required steps, and in brackets, I have basically the tool that you're going to be using to accomplish this step. So I'd suggest you having, first of all, your servers remoted into. So I have here 2 sessions, one for my main server and one for my expansion server. So I'm ready in both RDPs, so I'm good with that. Now, let's start with configuring the users and the services and all that stuff to be able to work with the directory failover. Now, notice that sometimes that you might be working on a system that is already running. So you have your Genetec services up and running, system is recording, and you actually want to minimize the downtime for the client. So it's very important to have everything prepared before you go ahead and configure Genetec. So Genetec will be step 9 and 10, I would say, which is at the very, very, very end. So try to do everything that you can first. And the way I do it, I go to step 1, I do it on the main server and on the expansion server at the same time. I don't move on to step 2 until step 1 is completed. So let's go ahead and start with that. Ensure that the service account is a local administrator or domain admin. What service account are we referring to here? We're talking about the Genetec server services. So we have to run it with a username that is either a local user to the server or a local user or a domain user. So if you're on a domain and they have Active Directory running and they have a user that is assigned to be an administrator, you can run the services with that user. Okay? Now, let's imagine that you got a call and you do not have any users that have been configured or anything like that. So you go, first off, I would suggest opening all those tools on both machines so you can cut down your time. So computer management, SQL Management Studio, configuration manager, and then services. So we're going to open all those on first machine. Computer management, SQL Management Studio, services, and SQL Configuration Manager. Okay. We're going to open the same on the other machine. Computer Management, SQL Management Studio, Services, SQL Configuration Manager. Awesome. So let's go back to the main server. Oops, sorry, main server. Now let's go back to our steps. So we have to make sure that there is a user that is a local admin or a domain administrator. So by opening computer management on both machines, I can go ahead and check the users that are available in there. So currently there is only one user who's named training. He's a built-in account. Let's say the client doesn't want to use that. So you right click, new user, and I'm going to name that user Genetec USR. And then password, I'm going to type Genetec123, Genetec123, an exclamation mark. And I also like to write the password in here just for clarification purposes, so I don't forget what the password is. User cannot change password, user never expires, or password never expires. And I'm going to click on create. That creates the user for me, but that's not enough. So I'm going to have to, if he's a local user, I'm going to have to go into properties and make him member of administrators. Okay, so advanced, find now, administrators, okay. So that user now is ready on this machine. I'm going to replicate exactly the same thing on my expansion server. So by going to computer management, let's take a look at users. Maybe he's there. Nope, he's not there. So I'm going to right click new user. Now it's very important that the credentials that you put for those two users, if you're not using a local domain account, they have to be the same. So my password here is exactly the same password as I had on the other machine. Genetech123 exclamation mark, Genetech123 exclamation mark. The user must not change the password. The user cannot change password and never expire. Create. Okay, so we created that user. Again, we have to give him administrators, properties, member of, add, and I'll go to advanced, find now, administrators, and click OK, apply, and OK. So we created the user. Great. Now we have to run the services with that user. But I usually tend to run the services of Genetech later on. Okay, so I know everything else is on my list, and then I'll move on to changing the user that's running the Genetech services, and as well restarting SQLs at the same time as well. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to move on to step 2. Ensure that the Genetech service account has access to the database. So we are planning on running the services on those two machines with that Genetech USR user. Okay, so I can go into SQL Management Studio and add that user right now. Okay, so I'm going to click on Connect, and it's going to use the username that you've logged into Windows with. I'm going to click on OK or Connect. Now, on security, you're going to expand it to logins, and expand logins and check if that user is in there. Genetech USR, and I don't see that user. So I'm going to right click on logins, click on new login, search, also go to advanced and find now, and from here you should find Genetech USR. Now click on OK, OK, and also you have to, it's in the steps as well. Step number 3, you have to grant that user a sysadmin. Okay, so because we are at the same location right now, I can combine step 2 and step 3 together and go to main server and go to server roles, check sysadmin, okay, and you're good with that server. Now I'm going to go back to the other server and do the exact same thing. So SQL Management Studio, again, we're going to hit connect, security, logins. I don't see Genetech USR. Here you go, that's the user. Click on OK, OK, and now again, step 3 is go to server roles, give him sysadmin, and click on OK. Now, if the client has a problem with assigning sysadmin to that user, there is a GTAP link or a tip link. I will refer to that GTAP link down below. Now that we've assigned the user, or we allowed the user login into SQL, let's move on with the steps ahead. So enable remote connections in the SQL Management Studio Express. Now, this has been enabled on all SQL 2014 versions. So by default, it is enabled on SQL 2014. But just for verification purposes, or for those of you who don't know where to check for it, basically on the database itself, on the very top, you right-click, go to Properties, and then from Connections, you have to make sure that Allow Remote Connection to this server is checked. On older versions of SQL, you had to enable that checkbox right here. So that's on the main server. Let's do it on the expansion server as well. On the expansion server, I'm going to go to my database, right click, properties, connections, and it is checked as well. So as we said, this one is done for us. Enable named pipes and TCP/IP. That's an SQL configuration manager. We also open those tasks or those tools. Here's SQL configuration manager. Now you're going to have to expand SQL Server Network configurations and click on protocols for SQL. Usually, named pipes and TCP/IP are disabled by default. So they're set exactly like this. What you have to do is right-click on it, click on Enable, and click on OK. Now, what is it saying in that message? Can't be clicking like I do because I'm too used to that. I know what it is, but I should have actually shown you what it is. So any changes made will be saved. However, they will not take effect until the service is stopped and restarted. So we have to stop the SQL services for the changes to take effect. So I'm going to click on OK for that. Now that they're enabled, I'm going to go ahead and enable them on the. So remember, what we have to do right now is we have to restart so far our SQL services. So far, that's what we have to do as of services wise. Okay, so I'm going to wait on restarting the services until the end because I'm going to have to restart all three of them. Genetec, SQL, and then the browser we're going to have to restart. So hold on tight on restarting the services right now. So I've done it on one server. I haven't done it on the other. I haven't done it on the main server. As you can see here, they're disabled by default. So I'm going to right-click Enable. Yes, it's telling me I have to restart the services again. Enable. OK. All right. Done on both servers with Configuration Manager. Start the SQL browser service, set it to automatic, or set it to specific port in the SQL Configuration Manager. Now, I'm going to show you this in the both ways suggested. So if it's very simple that the client can enable SQL browser, we're going to go to SQL browser, okay? And by default, this service is set to disabled, okay, and stopped. So that's how you're going to find it. When you try to start it, it doesn't start because it's set to disable. So you're going to have to right-click, go to Properties, set it to Automatic, Apply, Start, and OK. And you have to do that on both servers. Oops. Now Word is going to open up in our way. So SQL browser. Again, I have enabled it on that one, and I've done the same exact thing, and it's currently running. Okay, so I'm good with that. Let's get this out of the way. Okay. So my SQL browser services are enabled on both machines. Now, if I don't want to enable SQL browser services, what we can do is set it to a specific port, for example, port 1433 in SQL Configuration Manager. And how you do so is basically you go back to your Configuration Manager on TCP/IP, right-click, go to Properties, go to IP address, scroll all the way down, and set that port to be 1433. And there is a little note down here that says blank if dynamic ports are not enabled. To use dynamic ports, set it to 0. So I don't want anything in there. I want the TCP port 1433, and basically that's telling me to restart the SQL services. Click on OK. Now I can stop that service and click on OK. Okay, so either way works. I'm going to hit start, and I'm going to set that to dynamic ports again. I'm going to go to properties, IP addresses. Instead of 1433, I'm going to set the top one to 0, and now it will assign a dynamic port. So I believe maybe we need to restart the services, but it's worth checking. It's still 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until everything is done, and then I'm going to restart all the services at the end. So I take that as a habit, just restart the services all together at the end. Okay. So restart the SQL Server services, the SQL browsers, and the SQL services, but we also have a remainder in number 1, which is changing the users to run the services with the Genetec USR. So because I'm going to be stopping Security Center while I restart the SQL Server and the SQL browser, might as well just do the change of users right now to run the service with the Genetec USR. So on the expansion server, wherever you feel like you want to start, I'd go to the Genetec services, go to log on. Obviously, I have that user set up, but if you don't, you go to browse, you go to advanced, find now, select the user that you want, and enter his password right here. Okay. Click apply and OK. It will alert you that you're going to have to restart the services. So now I'm ready to restart Genetec, SQL services, and the SQL browser. Okay. So I would start with the SQLs first. SQL browser restart. SQL server restart. And finally, Genetec server restart. Now, why did I do that? Oops, I have a problem here. It did not. See, that's why I wanted to restart that service. It actually telling me that there is a logon failure. So something with my user here, I didn't put properly. So I'm going to go to properties, go to logon, make sure I just enter his password again, and hit apply. Log on as a service right. And now I'm going to try to start. And there you go. Genetec services have been restarted, and SQLs have been restarted on the expansion server. Now it's time to do the same on my main server. So on Genetec services, here I don't have the user configured, so I'm going to go to log on, this account, browse, advanced, find now, and here's my Genetec USR user. Enter his password. Remember, the password that you've entered here is the same password that I've just entered in the other server. So click on OK. And now I have to restart all 3 services on here. Again, I would start with SQL. Now, why do I start with SQL? Because when I restart my Genetec services, my SQL services should be up and running so my directory can connect to it. If I restart the Genetec services and they come up before I restart SQL, well, it's going to drop again. Now Genetec. Okay, Genetec server has been restarted. All right, so now I think we are kind of ready. Let's check the last step. Make sure the servers are reachable by pinging each other. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to have to go to the host file, and I put a link to that so you can click on it, and it would take you to the host file that's on your current machine. So it's usually under Windows, System32, drivers, etc. Okay. So let's double verify that we can actually ping each other. Let's go to command prompt. cmd. So from the expansion server, I want to try pinging the main server with IP and with DNS name. So ping 192.168.100.108. That is the IP address of my main server, and as you can see, I can get a reply. Next, I'm going to try pinging with a DNS name, which is gtrain-te-s108. Enter. And it's pinging with a DNS name, which is great. Okay. Now, if that doesn't work, if you tried with the DNS name and you're not getting a reply, what you're going to have to do is actually go to that host file. So host file is available on the C drive, Windows, System32, drivers, etc, and that's the host file. So we're going to open it up in Notepad, and as you can see here, I've added those two lines to point to my IP addresses and to my machines. So usually when you open that blank, well, default, you'll only find lines up to here. This is the default text that you find in there. So what you're going to have to do is enter a new line and put the IP address of the machine and the desired or the name of that machine name. So IP address and then tab and then the DNS name of the machine, if you are not able to ping it. Okay. Now, by saving this information into the file, you're actually creating a local DNS where it comes and look for stuff in here before it actually fetches the DNS server for information. Okay. So you can actually point all your servers, so you can put all your servers in this list, so no matter what happens to this machine, it can pull that information from your host file. Sometimes you need to do that. In our system right now, today, we don't need to do that, but I've just added it for fun. Okay. Again, that step needs to be done on both servers, not on one server. Okay. So both servers should have all this information in it. Cool. Okay, so I think we are ready to move on with our Genetec stuff because we are mostly done with all those steps. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to start up our Genetec systems and see what we have. So on the main server, I'm going to go to first of all, I'm going to go to the Genetec server admin and see what I have in there. Maybe the system is not licensed. So I'm going to have to go in here and check the status of the system. Apparently it says that there is no license has been found, so it's not licensed. I'm going to take a look at the database, and the word local here, just remember it for future reference. We're going to use that setting over here. We're going to need to change it to something else. Okay, so the database name here from local needs to be changed to something else, which could be either this name, the name of your server, or the IP address. Okay, but I'll leave it until we get there. Okay, so first thing now, what we need to do is we need to get a license for that server. All right, so now we're back. We have our main directory licensed. So you just grab a license from wherever source you have, demo license or dev license. So the directory is running on the main server. Let's go ahead and log into config tool and get that going. Admin, log on. We're local, we're good. Okay, so click on cancel, never show this again. Okay, so to start configuring your directory failover, you're going to have to go to System, Roles, and then Directory Manager. Now, if you don't have the directory manager over here in their config tool, that means they're not licensed for directory failover. Simple as that. We go to directory server and we start adding our servers that we want to be directory load balancers. Okay? So I am not sure if I pointed my expansion server to my main server, so I'm going to have to do that at first. So I'm going to go to my expansion server, go to server admin, so from here, we're going to click on main server connection. And as you can see, there is no IP address that it needs to connect to. So we're going to have to either put the IP address or put the DNS name. So I'll put the IP address 192.168.100.108. So I'm on the expansion server. The expansion server's IP address is 208, but I'm pointing to my main IP, or to my main server's IP, which is IP 108. So this machine here has IP 108. This machine here has IP 208. Okay, I'm gonna click on password, and the password that I'm entering here is the password of server admin on my main server. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Save. And save. It will tell you some modifications require the Genetec servers to be restarted before that they take any effect. So yes, go ahead and restart your service. Now that the services are restarting, they should come back up, and we should be able to see that server merged or joined our primary. The first place you're going to see your newly added server to your system is under the network view. So as soon as it comes online, as you see right now, just came in, it's going to show up in the GTrain and the network view. Okay, so we go on system. Now that we're ready, we can again go click on the plus sign, add the secondary server in here, click on add, and apply. Ooh, okay. The main database server is configured as local SQL Express. Remember, I told you, just remember that word local. We're going to come back to it. Now it's the time. So the system is suggesting that we change the word local to either be an IP address or a machine name. And it's actually telling me my machine name over here. So again, going back onto here. Oops. Right here. We need to change that from the word local to the local IP address or the local DNS name. Why is that? Now let's take a look. If we put the word local and this database is local to this machine, fine. Local will connect that machine to that. But now what if this machine fails? The word local now is going to be transferred to that server, and he's going to start looking on a database on his own, which still does not exist. So that's why we're going to have to put the IP address or the DNS name here on that server admin guy. So on the main server, I'm going to go and remove the word local and put either the IP address of that machine or the DNS name. The DNS name is right here, and the IP address is right here. Okay? So I'm going to put 192.168.100.108 and hit save. Also, it's telling me that it needs to restart the service to connect to the new database. So yes, go ahead and restart. Now, it seems to be an issue here. It's not allowing a system to connect with an IP address, and let's try to find out why. Let's see our host file if we had done any mistakes in that, if any. So, or maybe we haven't actually done it on this machine yet. So, Windows, System32, drivers, etc, hosts, notepad. See, there's nothing there. Watch it. As soon as I enter this, gtrain-te-s108 192.168.100.208 hash equal gtrain-te-s208. Okay, so I rebuilt my host file. Let's see what's going to happen right now. Database is connected right now, and directory is starting right away. The moment I hit save on that host file, everything is starting up. So let's wait for the directory to be online. My directory still says starting. Okay, so now it's up and running. Now I can go to my config tool and start configuring my system. So back again to config tool. Okay. I'm going to go to System, Roles, we're going to go now to Directory Manager. See, all the roles are red now. They're just coming up right now. And my config tool is really slow. So let me close this guy up. Okay, directory servers again. We're going to go ahead and try to add that server again. 208, add. Note, up till this moment, this server, 208, is an expansion server. Not until I hit apply and I license that it would turn to a directory. So I'm going to hit apply and let's see what comes up now. The failover server list has been modified. You must apply a new license in order for the new directories to work properly. Now, remember the basics of Security Center. The server that requires a license is a server that is running the main directory, right? And it's usually one per system. Now, if you want to introduce a failover, there is another server that needs to be a directory. So the validation key that you took at the very beginning to license your first server, we're going to have to do the same, but from inside config tool, from right here, from modify license. And now when I take a validation key manually or web activation, whatever, okay, I am actually grabbing a validation key for those two servers. Okay. Now you could go to whatever source to get your license. So I'm going to pause that just for a second. All right, so I got my license key. Let's go ahead and put that in. Click on activate. It will show you the license stuff. It is a dev license that I applied, and click on apply. And now that's when this server goes offline and it comes back as a directory server. But it comes back as a directory server as this. So it is primarily connected to the server or to the database that's on the primary server. Okay. So it is another access point. Client can point to that IP, and that directory role will take the information to here, verify it with this database, and come back with it. That means if this server goes down with this database on it, this server will not be able to serve the purpose He does not have a database yet of his own. So that's what we're after, and that's what we want to configure here. So we're just waiting for those settings to get applied. Okay, so as you can see, that server went offline, and it should come back online soon. Now, everything here is done so far by moving the by selecting a server and moving it up or down. You're changing the failover priorities. Okay. And we're going to be talking about force the first server in the list. So basically, this will allow the first server in the list to be forced as the directory role. Okay. Now, our final settings should be in the database failover tab. But before, we should make sure that this server comes online first, because that's what we're going to have to configure. So let's give it a second. And the server is back online. Okay, so moving to database failover, we're going to go ahead and enable database failover. Now, you can choose SQL mirroring, always on, or backup and restore. What we're going to go through today is the in-home method, in-house method, which is the backup and restore. So, just before I get into this, let's go to the backup and restore mechanism here, just to show you what exactly happens. Basically, this is what we're trying to accomplish. So far, what we have is that triangle right here. This is what we have so far. And now we're going to have to add this database, which is called the database failover. Okay? So the database, how does it fail over to this guy? So incremental backups are performed on this database. So a backup is created on this database, saved in a folder on this machine, and over the network, it is transferred to the other machine and restored on that database. So backup, folder, folder, restore. Okay? So where are those folders being set? Those folders are being set from right here. So if we take a look at this server and this line, this is in by default because this is your main directory. But you're going to have to create the second line for the second server. So this is the server that is running the main directory. That's the database name. That's the database instance. This is the database name, and that's the restore folder. So it's C Security Center backup on this machine. Now we're going to have to create the entry for the other server. So I'm going to click on cancel. I'm going to click on the plus sign, choose a server, wait until this is done turning, and then I'll be able to select the database server from this list, or the instance. Now, if after that I still don't see anything in here, that means my browser on machine 208 is disabled. So I'm just going to click on that enabled. And database, basically you can choose the database name you want. Don't put spaces in there or weird characters. Just make it directory over. Now the restore folder is this portion here, the folder that you are willing to create so they can exchange that information on that folder. So we're going to create that folder, okay, and point to that. So the restore folder, let's browse the C drive. I'd like to keep them identical. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to C drive, click on create folder, and create a folder called Security Center Backup. It's the same exact name of the folder on the other machine. So add, it's right there, select it, and click on OK. See? Beautiful. So now we are going to hit apply, and what we're going to do is we're going to generate a full backup. And I'm expecting this to remain as server unavailable. And why? It's because I do not know if my firewall is checked or not. So firewall on both machines, very important. Firewalls are on, so I'm going to disable firewalls or have the necessary ports opened. Have the necessary ports opened on those machines and you should be all right. So I've done it on the main server. I have to do it on the expansion server. And voila. It should now be working. It says ready, so let's see what happens. It should actually clear that yellow message up, and let's see what it's actually saying. I'm curious. Cannot verify configuration for the database gtrain. Okay, access is denied to retrieve diagnostic information. Okay. So now it says ready. You know what? I'm just going to give it a kick and let it do its thing. So when it is ready, I should see those timestamps together, the same timestamps for both. And directory failover is running. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned, which is very, 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 very important, is that the location of that folder. Now, in most of our installations, we have those folders available locally on the servers. But let's say you have it on another machine or in a map drive or something like that. You need to make sure that the user that's running the Genetec server services, which is in our case Genetec USR, has access to that drive and to that location wherever they're writing to. So let's just emulate that. So if I go here, Security Center Backup, I need to right click, go to Properties, make sure I go to Security, Edit, and add Genetec USR in there and give him full permissions. Genetec USR, okay, okay. And I'm gonna give him allow everything and apply. On both machines, this needs to be done. Okay, well, this sums it up for the directory failover setup. I hope this video has been beneficial to you, and please share as needed. Thank you very much, and have yourselves a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.